Hi everyone, this is Jivtesh, an architect at Microsoft, and today I want to talk to you about how technology is ready to drive greater impact, specifically through the non-profit accelerator. I want to cover the next few minutes talking to you about some of the challenges that non-profits face, and then we'll jump into a demonstration of the non-profit accelerator, wherein we'll take over different personas as a fundraiser, volunteer, program, award managers, as well as leaders. And then at the end, I made a quick cartoon as well, talking about some of the transparency that people keep requesting from nonprofits. To start off with, I want to recommend a couple of books which I've been reading in the last few months, and which talk a lot about the challenges that nonprofits have faced historically, but also some of the new expectations that people have from nonprofits. So Ken Stern, who's written the book, with Charity for All, talks about how people have started to look at nonprofits and the donations that they make there as investments, and they want those returns that they expect from investments via the impact that nonprofits deliver. At the same time, as Anne Mai Chang says in her book on lean impact, often nonprofits have a lot of complicated requirements wherein before they can have impact that sticks, they have to raise funds, they have to engage communities, they have to make sure that they're compliant, and as well as, with the new focus on security as well, they have to make sure that everything is always secure as they try and meet these, high expectations. So in Lean Impact, and talks a lot about how it the nonprofits and the social sector has to transform with these new expectations. They have to start to think about how they can scale up, but do that by starting small. At the same time, make sure that they're relentlessly always seeking impact to identify and track the metrics that matter to increase impact and scale. Now, I think technology can enable a lot of that, and I want to talk to you about the nonprofit accelerator and how some of those areas with regards to scalability, security, as well as driving that end-to-end impact is possible through that. So, but first I'll jump into a demonstration, and then we'll just get back and wrap things up around the common data model. So the nonprofit accelerator, right now, what you see on my screen is a lot of different apps that come out of the box as sample apps for the not-for-profit accelerator. You'll see an app for awards, you'll see an app for constituents, you'll see app for delivery framework, fundraising, the nonprofit hub, which includes a lot of what's included in the nonprofit accelerator. Let's start with the nonprofit hub. So when I look at the nonprofit hub on my home screen, I could have a dashboard where I'm looking at the households, what are my commitments via various individual donors as well as via households, how how's the pledged amount looking from different major donors that I have, as well as what are the active donor commitments. But if I was to look on the left-hand side, you'll see that a lot of components that are a part of the nonprofit starter pack. So the nonprofit starter pack covers the end-to-end donor, the funding cycle that nonprofits face. So you start off with, raising funds, managing constituents, having awards and grants, and then delivery framework around, creating that impact. And then we'll talk about the International Aid Transparency Initiative as well. But probably, best if you've never looked at Dynamics 365, which is using the nonprofit starter pack in this particular case, a good place to start would be to just, look at the homepage and how the business application world has transformed in the last few years as well. So typically, you'd always have systems of records. So over here, I can look at, who are my individuals in my customer relationship management system, but I can look at, who are the donors and the households. But this is all a system of record. Where Dynamics takes this a step forward is that it is a system of intelligence. So if I was to look on the top right corner now, I have capabilities around intelligence, or something we call relationship assistant. So now the relationship assistant right now is telling me about, which opportunities that I have closing soon. But then from a non-profit perspective, it's telling me that there's a donor commitment where the next payment date is due in a month. So go ahead and review it. So maybe I'll start here and I'll go ahead and review that donor commitment. So I can see in here, what's going on with this particular donor, as well as I can go in now into their individual contact record and start looking at, which is the household that they are a part of in this particular case, and then, get more details around them. But I could start off also from just looking up an individual. So in this case, I'm looking at Bertram. I'll open up his record. So now with Bertram, I have a more rich history in this particular case. So all the emails that they've sent to me, what sort of collab phone calls that I've had with them, and what appointments I've had with them as well. But what Dynamics also allows you to do is have this capability of having a series of activities that you carry out with a major donor, in this case like Bertram. So Bertram made a large donation of $10,000, and based on that, now I can have a series of activities that are associated with Bertram. I'll launch this manually so you can see it in detail, but then you can trigger it based on how one of your donor commitments is going on, or how your any data is changing. So in this particular case, whenever someone makes a donation above $10,000, I have the high value donor playbook that gets launched and gets associated with that specific donor. What that does is it associates a series of activities which we've defined as best practices. So in this particular case, every time someone makes that large donation, we want to give them a phone call. We want to invite them to the next community event. We want to include them in a nurture campaign that we have for high value donors, wherein we inform them about the impact that we are doing with various programs, and then we want to send them an impact report as well. So uh, those are a few quick capabilities on how the world of business applications has evolved from system of record to a system of intelligence capability. But now getting back to the non-profit startup pack, what we want to look at is that end-to-end funding life cycle that we are able to that transparency that we are able to provide with the non-profit startup pack. So I've got a donor in Bertram, and now what I can do is I can look at from here itself what their specific donor commitments are. Now I'm looking at the non-profit hub right now, wherein I see a lot of options, but you can of course limit this based on what is relevant to your specific organization. So I'll go ahead and look at all the donor commitments that Bertram has, and you'll see in here that he's got three specific commitments, and one of them is an unrestricted pledge, and a couple of them are restricted around specific initiatives. Let me look at this particular donor commitment around the education-based designation. And when I start looking at this, I can look at what's the total amount that's dispersed. I can look at what the financials behind this are, but I can also look at what my connections are for this particular designation. So in this particular case, the education restricted designation is linked to the health initiatives delivery framework. So now I want to look a little deeper into the health initiatives framework. I can go in there, look at what are the goals associated with it, but then I can take it further. And there's I always believe that you always need to measure the goals that you have, and then you need to understand where you were, where you are, and where you're going, and then have quantifiable indicators around it as well. So with my health initiatives delivery framework, now I want to look at what are some of the results that we've been tracking. So look here, there's a couple of results, Q1 and Q2 training delivery. I can go deeper into the Q1 training delivery. But again, getting deeper into impact now, I can go in and look further into what are the indicators that are associated with it. So if some of you follow the UN Sustainable Development Goals, you'll see that most of these goals have indicator values associated with them as well. So it's that same concept that is an industry standard that people expect. So with this goal, I can see the indicators, the number of trainings that are delivered. So I'll go into the number of trainings that have been delivered as the indicator, but then I can go in and look further down into the indicator values as well. And I can go in and look at in the January 19 trainings, uh, there were a total number of 8 people who were helped out. And then, I can also look at who were the beneficiary recipients in this particular case who were the individuals. So I've been able to track that end-to-end journey from the perspective of my donor to the program that they wanted to be associated with. So providing that deeper level of transparency to them as well. So, but once you have all of this data in the common data service, that opens it up for a lot more intelligence and capabilities as well. And I want to give you some more examples of that. But before I do that, I just want to show you some of the other capabilities that we might not have a chance to go through in this quick demonstration. So in fundraising, we've got planned giving, memberships, designations. From an award perspective, you can have requests and awards associated with it. And then as with any activity in in Dynamics 365, you've got the capability to put it on a process flow. So for example, in this particular case, I'm looking at a major gift related process flow. So I can look through how this is going from the perspective of a business process flow as well. And each process I can define what all I want to track before I move it over to the next stage. And then, so organizations can define their own process flows. So you can have those sort of same process flows set up with, your planned giving donations or your award processes as well. So I'll switch over to some of the other sample apps that we provide. So this is like a subset of the constituent apps. Just gives you, if an individual is just managing constituents, so they have access to information around constituents. If someone is managing fundraising, they only have access to the fundraising capabilities in the fundraising sample app. So just making it easy. The goal is to, number one, provide that industry standard around nonprofits, but then also make it easy to reduce the cost to implement a system like this. So we looked at how the not-profit starter pack can help organizations as well as partners make it easier and a little faster in terms of deploying great value for the social sector. Now let's look further on how we can use capabilities of AI and what natural language to further scale up and provide great customer service. So the next example I want to give is that say you're getting in a lot of requests from your donors or even volunteers, and now you want to understand what the request is about and then route it to the right person in their channel of choice. So in this particular case, I've got a major donor who is asking about an impact report. They're saying, can you send me the impact report? I couldn't find it on the website. And because they're a major donor, I want it routed to a person via phone as well because I want to respond to them as soon as possible. So I've got this language understanding cognitive service, which has been trained based on how people talk, and then based on that, it tries and understands the intent of a person, and then routes it to the right person. So behind so what's happening pulling this AI capability as well as the natural language query together is a Microsoft flow. So in this particular flow you can see there's capabilities around text analytics and content and everything which analyzes it, and then it's actually generated a phone call. So I'll accept this phone call now.
Hey, one of your important donors, Bertram Christopherson, just sent in an email. Looks like it is about a health education Cambodia. I've summarized the information about this in an email. Take care.
So what's just happened in there is that, one of the emails which came into our organization, it was almost like a machine understood it and then made a phone call to someone who is their relationship manager, and then, pretty much provided that information to them. So let me show you what just happened in the background as well, because the possibilities with this are endless. So in this particular case, it looked at an email, it got the prediction, but I can, as to can you send me the impact report? Based on that, it understood that the top scoring intent is that it's about one of the programs we run around health education in Cambodia. It figured out what the key phrases were. Now I can do things like get in documents from SharePoint or summarize information in an email or create a task for someone as well. But in this particular case, I just once I received that, okay, this particular contact is a major donor, I wanted a phone call to be made as well, and that was possible again using Flow. Another example of how our customers as well as nonprofits have been taking advantage of this one platform is PowerApps. So with PowerApps, you can create your own applications quite quickly, and we at Microsoft run some of these hackathons wherein in a almost a day customers will figure out how to build an app that solves a real business problem for them. Great example for that was an organization that serves people in over 10 different countries in Southeast Asia. They try and capture surveys from their field staff. So now, in those 10 different languages, now they can't really be in one application that does that and then reports it back into one language for their reporting as well. So they created this application which so right now I've got Indonesian selected as a language. If I was to switch it over to say Italian, it would switch the text over to Italian. Then I can go in and pretty much start collecting information from with regards to the survey out in the field in the language that my field agents are comfortable in, and then all that information, once it is captured, is sent back converted into English because that is their requirement into the CRM as well. So those were two quick examples. My final piece, which I want to show you as you explore the non-for-profit accelerator deeper, is the D portal. So D portal is one of the portals that's which lets you search on IATI data. So that's the International Aid Transparency Initiative data. So a lot of not-profits are now it's become an international standard. So the UK and the EU government are kind of mandating that they'll only work on certain programs with non-profits that are providing their data over to publishing it on IIT. So I can come in here and let's say I want to look at what's going on in malaria. So, from a malaria control perspective, I can look at it's found 44, 66 activities. I can look at all the individual projects, where the money is coming from. I can look at what are the active projects in a individual location as well. And I can go deeper into all the data that has been submitted as well. Now, you'll see in here a lot of data that I see in here are from larger organizations, mainly because it's for the smaller organizations. It's a little hard to uh, basically get the data so that they can publish it in the right format. So the non-profit starter pack, one of the capabilities that it does have is the whole IAT file generation. So you can generate an activity file from within the non-profit hub, and which makes that submission much easier as well. So let's just wrap up quickly in terms of what we've looked at. I saved this slide for last because I was worried if I showed in the beginning, most people would leave without watching the demonstration. But essentially, the common data model for not-for-profits, which is then consumed by Dynamics 365 and hosted as the on the common data service, extends the overall common data model. It's got over 75 entities that have been discussed with various industry experts, large organizations like Blackboard, as well as our partners as well. It's got over 1,500 data attributes. So if you consider awards, budgets, and some of the things we saw around planned giving and policies and everything. So we've come up with the standards around those entities and then put them together so that from an interoperability perspective, which is always a challenge for nonprofits, that makes it a little bit easier as well. Got, aligning it to IAT standards as we discussed, and all of this is available on GitHub with sample applications as well as a schema explorer uh, to take things further. So I showed you the demo already. I just want to show you the cartoon that I promised. As I talk to a lot of my friends around nonprofits, you'll see that people are always talking about the cost per dollar, and which is a wrong conversation to have. And what I was trying to explain to one of my friends recently is that it's about impact and it's about the outcomes that nonprofits are able to serve. And then, with now something like IAT, you're also able to provide more transparency, something, uh, most donors are now demanding. So this presentation, along with a few other resources, are available on aka.ms nonprofit overview. It's not case sensitive. Just want to wrap up with this quote from Anne's book that innovation is the path, impact is the destination. You know, to stay focused on the ultimate change we seek to make in the world, whether it's to alleviate suffering, end an injustice, or protect the environment. Uh, Innovation should be the service to that goal. Thank you.